Welcome to the Select Board meeting for Monday, March 3rd. Call to order at 6:40 p.m. First item of business, discussion regarding the search for the Senior and Community Center Director position and review of the draft materials.
Everybody got the track change version?
Mm-hmm. And blue, those are yours, correct, Jim? Yeah.
Yes, blue came from Jim, red is what I put in based on what I understood to be the conversation that...
Yeah. I
you
read
two
through it. It captures, I know we talked about it as well, briefly, I think.
You guys did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
2
talked to
weeks ago when
Brian,
you weren't feeling well.
because I hadn't sent it, but I just gave him the lowdown of what it was, and most of it was already captured in the conversation.
I mean, I looked through it. I don't, following along with all the changes, a little haphazard in the with all of them showing, but I think I got through it.
Well, I think, again, summarize from 2 weeks ago, what we were trying to do is truly capture that the job is much more than just this center, that there's outreach involved and guidance, support for some of the elder population that may or may not come here for programs, but there's counseling and outreach and those things. So I think this captures what we were looking for.
There was only one piece, and maybe I missed it when I was reading it, and that's why I'm trying to read it again and make sure I didn't just miss it. Brian, when you and I talked, there was a piece about the works in conjunction with other town departments such as Recreation Commission, Public Library, and School Department. But
And you wanted to add
There-
more to...
yeah, there was some.
14?
There was the thought about it works in conjunction, but it's in conjunction or in collaboration. But I forget what use conjunction. And I think it was something along the lines like in an effort to assist in facilitating programming for
Yeah, right.
All groups.
for all for patrons of all ages, something like that. You know,
I think that I keep rereading the first statement of duties and not quite finding it. I see like and surrounding communities, but it's not quite the
yeah.
and other, you know.
I thought
Yeah.
the piece that would work would be in the new number 14 under position descriptions,
Got it.
under essential functions. Sorry, I think it works in there.
Yeah, I knew I read it somewhere. I was like, where the heck is
Yeah, it's under essential. It's the
Yep.
new number 14. It's the last bullet,
it?
and I think if we just add that line, and not just the period on school department, just elaborate a little bit more of
How would you
how
like it
they're
worded?
working. Say that again.
How would you like it worded?
So you have works in conjunction with other town departments such as the Recreation Department, Public Library, and School Department to assist in facilitating programs for residents of all ages.
Okay.
That's a draft and open to interpretation from the two of you.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was reading through it a couple of times, and I'm like, I know it should be in here somewhere, and I'm not sure if that's the best spot or if it should be up in the statement of duties, but as long as it's in there somewhere. Yeah,
No,
actually,
I think that works, Scott.
Other than that, I didn't have any concerns with the edits. I appreciated it was much needed. It was outdated.
This one hasn't been done in a long time.
Yeah, so thank you for all of that.
We were fortunate to have somebody in the position for that long.
It's true.
So,
Okay, I made that note.
Say that again.
I said I've made that note.
Thank you.
I feel strongly that we should probably put it in both. I know you said either, but I think
You're
it's,
saying somewhere up in the statement of duties as well?
yeah, I mean, if we truly are saying that we feel like it is a overarching,
Then it should be
part of what should be
highlighted
happening,
twice.
then to me it is in that broad scope
Okay.
statement in the beginning that
You're
says
not
kinda
gonna get me to
here's what
argue
it
that.
encompasses, and
yeah.
I don't. It ends up getting bulleted at the bottom to me as a thing we might do or a task. But if it's a core, I guess I just go back to we've had lots of conversations about wanting more of that to be a core function or core task that is being done or a core of
Mhm.
the overall role, and I think it would do it justice to have it up there, I guess.
I can agree with that. Maybe insert it before the last sentence in statement of duties. That
Yeah,
is it.
I'm just trying to figure out if that's the best spot to put it in.
So we start out with, routine, semi-routine, detailed, complex administrative duties. So there's a type of duties. What are you administering? Daily operations of the center, implementation of policies and programs to support the senior citizens and surrounding communities. And
As-
to me, right there, we talked
Period.
about it could be period in another sentence, but
Yeah.
kind of what are you responsible for? You're also responsible for, supporting, I guess it depends on how we want to word it. Is it similar? Is it implementing
Not
programming,
so much.
or is it supporting
It's
the
supporting.
implementation
So at
of?
least my
So it's just flipping those two words a little bit of
correct.
saying like
In-
supporting the
in my
implementation
view,
of.
she's not creating or implementing the programming that is for residents of all ages. She is supporting them so that they have access to this community center to use it for that purpose.
Right. So, like for example, around the holiday time, they have the breakfast with Santa.
Yeah.
And that's something that is the responsibility of the rec department to manage and coordinate, but they need cooperation from
The director here.
the director of this to, schedule the time, make sure it's not conflicting with other things, make sure it's properly supported, and whether it needs access to the kitchen or access to certain areas.
I come back to the rec committee a lot only because there was a time when we did have a rec center that they could go to, and they had 2 large rooms they would use, and there was access for them to do that. They don't have that, so it's all just programming that is either in other spaces or outside. And so by having this space available when it's not currently being used or in conjunction with as a space for the community to use for those type of functions. I think just fitting it in there right after that sentence, Jake, just what you had mentioned,
Like after the surrounding communities.
after surrounding communities and before performance of duties requires. If we just embed one more sentence in there that
Collaborate and support other
Collaborates
programming
with other,
with other led by or with other town departments.
collaborates.
Are you all okay if I add in Board of Health?
yes.
I left it out of the list unintentionally, but
Oh,
they already do a lot of
I was
programming
going to
with
say,
the Board of Health.
yeah, with the nursing, they already do all that here.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All the
So I think just sort of reformatting 14, the bullet point 14,
to
and
put it up
inserting
there.
that up there makes sense.
All right, do you mind if I take a stab at the sentence?
Go for it.
Collaborates with,
Second.
whoop.
Let me get my. There we go.
collaborates with other departments in support of community programming for members of all ages. Or it might sound a little better as in support of programming for community members of all ages.
Yeah, I like that one.
Okay. I was trying to think of another word for ages in my head, the generations, but yeah, no, it's fine.
I kind of shifted on the fly because I had community programs for community members, and just, okay, one community will do.
All ages, no, I like it. Okay.
What was the timeline we came up with that this needs to be done
You said
tonight?
you said you wanted to issue at the beginning of March. So not necessarily tonight, but soon.
Do you want to do a clean read on the towns before budget?
As long as it doesn't put us behind.
Fair.
I can get everything ready to go if you think you're ready.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was the last piece.
So I had drafted for you all the start of a position profile, which we've
Mhm.
done for some of the other department head positions like the chief, the library director, town planner. Do you want a document to go along with this to add to the search for distribution to potential applicants? And if so, I mean, some of it pulls from this job description, so
I
that
was
doesn't
gonna
need to be reinvented.
A lot of it is pulled
But-
from there.
When we did when we've done this in the past, we've focused on what the challenges and opportunities are. So knowing what bullet points you want me to focus on would be helpful. For instance, with the town planner, we put all of the recent grant projects or those that were on the horizon. I think for the chief, you all identified some focal points that you were looking for the next chief to focus on at the police department. And I know for the library director, there was an acknowledgement of this position only being the third director for the town and the new building having just been opened 2 years earlier, so that transition period. So it could be anything that you think we need to focus on.
So one, do we want the profile? To go with it?
I found it useful in the
I think
town
it's
planner.
helpful, yeah.
Okay.
You know, when we were doing the town planner search, it was very helpful.
Okay.
I think I lend to the same comment that Scott made, only around timing.
Right.
Is it something that if we give you the answers tonight that you're looking for, that you feel comfortable getting a pretty final draft for
Mhm.
Monday?
It's largely drafted.
I was
This
gonna-
was the one
That's what I
section.
I was
thought,
that
going to pull it
opened.
back
Just
up.
like
It
finalized?
was from
Yeah.
2 meetings ago.
The only thing I would do, I want to go back through it now that you've made these changes. I want to go back and reread it through this lens. I had Paula assist me with it when we were scoping it the first time, and then that was leading me to part of my question that I wanted to present to you all about how you wanted the position to be presented. So now that we've solidified the position description, I would want to go back and reread it through that new lens.
Yeah.
So if we highlight, like, what are the challenges and opportunities to call out in there? I think we just talked through one of them, right? Which is support expansion of programming and availability of the center resources to the entire community at different times. You know, supporting that, right? Because that's something that we've talked about for many years, but not been successful with. Again, it's going to be a supporting role, not a leading role, but it may
Yeah.
need some urging in both directions. Is one that I think of. I think community meal, I've heard a lot about over the years, that, you know, that need or you know, meals, whatever that scope looks like exactly. But
I think it's already referenced.
broadly, you know,
I think
in
it's
there?
already.
I think
No,
it
no,
was.
not that. The thing I was going to say, I think it's already referenced in there. I agree with you on both of those.
okay.
As a third point, just looking at the long-range plan of the center, the services, and the staffing plan needed to grow with the community needs over the next decade.
So strategic planning.
Yeah.
Mm.
You know, Paula started that when it was, you know, bringing on various staff, and there was, you know, specific thoughts about the roles that staff would play. But as time goes on, the strategic plan will let you know where we're gearing towards. It'll help capital, it'll help budget planning, it'll help all of that.
Can I ask you all, do you want this position to continue to have an involvement in the development of the senior housing complex and launching that service. It
I would-
has been sort of happening together with the senior center, but that it all existed before I got here, so I don't know if that was intentional because of the position or just happened because the individuals who are interested also happen to be involved at the center.
I think some involvement.
Okay.
I don't, it's not a leadership role, right? In that, I think there may be some appropriate support or,
Right,
you know,
some alignment.
assisting with hosting events and, you know, connections and stuff because it is that this community that frequents here. That's kind of what I think, like finding a balance, but I think it's also part of the long-term plan and that challenge and opportunity piece, right? That
Right.
happening while you're running the center is going to be a challenge. That happening in the next, you know, say 5 years, 3 years, whatever that timeline is exactly, there's also an opportunity, and how does that shape or change the programming and the offerings that you're looking at in that long-range plan, right? So I think it has a huge influence and impact,
Agreed.
positive and negative, so I think you can't lose that in there, even if we don't call it as something that they're going to be actively involved in on the day-to-day or anything.
Okay. All right, I'll start with that.
Any other key
So
items?
you're building this off of what we had for the meeting, what was it,
On,
the Thursday night?
it was the 20th.
Yeah, it's the
Yeah,
20th.
I mean, I think it's a strong document, and
Okay.
we can incorporate those things into it.
Okay. So I'll send the position description and a clean comment with all these new additions that you made. I will redraft that document from the 20th with these challenges and highlights and see if there's any other suggested edits I'd make based on the revisions to the description. And back for the 10th.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other critical kind of items of like either challenges or opportunities that you're aware of or that were discussed or that the director has brought up to us so far that we should incorporate overarching? I mean, there's some maintenance things, there's some other things, there's probably some balancing of as the it's not attendance and viewership. Wrong medium, expands, like balancing all the different things going on in the center, right? There's always a space constraint, but those are more generalized and normal, I think, so I don't know if there's any other call-outs.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any specific call-outs that I can think of. I mean, you can get really into
I was going to
weeds
say,
and
we get too specific,
What
we could
is-
be opening up Pandora's
Yeah,
box.
absolutely, that's why most of these I'd want them to be generalized. There was some feedback during the session with our legislators and such about partnering in the services that we're offering as part of the housing project.
Mhm.
But that ties here. Is there
Right.
any specific, maybe not exacting, but general like area of focus that we should call out as an opportunity there that supports that?
So
Yeah, well,
Or leave it off? I just
there's
a
some
thought.
of it in there, and it's represents the town and the Council of Aging in meetings at a local, regional, and state basis.
right.
I don't know if that's the one you're.
I was gonna say, building off of that, I think part of this is establishing and maintaining or fostering those relationships with those entities. They have either certain statutory authorities or they have certain programmatic capacities that we may not have, but by partnering together, we may be able to bring resources here. And I know that in some ways already happens here. So it may just be calling attention to that and also saying that you're looking for that to, one, be continued, but two, maybe further developed.
So like focus on collaborating with regional partners and expanding,
Right.
Support of or the ability to have programming
Right.
and different offerings with those community partners. Type
Right.
Thing.
Thinking like the partnership with Triad's been very,
Mm.
very important to the community here, and that's fostered mostly through this office.
Right.
I know that there is a relationship with LifePath. I know sometimes they have more capacity for us, other times they don't.
Sure.
We have the relationship with the FRTA. There's questions about, as their services evolve, do we evolve our program to match those new opportunities, or do we keep it the same because of programmatic goals that we're trying to accomplish? So I think all of those are examples of regional partnerships that we're already engaged in here, but maybe they need to be reviewed and
I mean, I think
We don't need to overdo it either. You know, I don't want to get
Agreed.
lost with too many. So
I was going to say,
think it's covered 'em.
if you want to get it in there, you could either expand on item number 9, which is maintain contact with the town departments, other COAs, local and area agencies, civic groups, local newspapers, or number
I think I'm. Let me
12.
interject. I think I was not clear on what I meant. I meant more in the profile.
in the
Is
profile.
it a focus item there or not? I think we do incorporate it in the position description pretty well. Based on the amount of unsure,
No.
I'm going to say no. It's
Leave-
not a
leave it out.
focus. I
It's
think
not
we've
a
got enough.
focus. No, leave it out.
Okay.
one more question. In the position description, this position back in 2015 had a building custodial position assigned to it. That was the staffing model back then, and that has since transitioned to buildings and grounds. So would it make sense to at least call out that the director in both of these buildings works with buildings and grounds for the care of the facility? I don't want to lead somebody to believe that they're going to be overseeing a maintenance staff, but instead they're going to be collaborating with a maintenance team on how to care for the building and use it.
I mean, does it belong in 14 as another department?
Good. I mean, it's probably almost a daily interaction or relationship.
Yeah,
or
we
if you want
used-
it to be a second one, it can be.
We used 14 and we expanded that, and it says for programming. So,
Thank you, because I'm trying to remember the
Yeah.
edit in my head.
Yeah,
So
we
maybe
had-
it's additional. It's you know, it's an additional one that's just
Okay.
so custodial and building maintenance services provided by the DPW. You know, works in collaboration with the highway superintendent. You know, and their direction of work for of the custodial and building maintenance services for this building, something like that.
Yeah, anything. I'm not tied to whatever the
The
permanent
language is,
language is,
yeah,
as
but
long as
it
it-
gets the point.
Okay. Thank you.
Any others?
No. And I think if anything comes back on the 10th, if we have to make a minor adjustment here or there, it's approved as amended and we move forward with it.
Absolutely.
Can't go another meeting. So
No, I think
come ready to
we-
approve.
We plan to approve what we have and review it, and any final edits and approve that night.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, if there's anything we find after, we'll make an adjustment.
We'll get it into final form.
And then get it ready to go in advertising on the 11th.
We can get it all ready to go. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Speaking of the devil.
I was thinking the same thing. I guess I do have one more question. In the physical skills, we have a weight limit in there. Do we normally carry one?
That came from a similar department head position description that was mostly office based.
Okay. Interesting.
So whether you do or don't, we can amend it, but that is language that we've used.
I'm not for or against carrying it, but that's awfully low if you carry a perm number
Mhm.
rather than a general statement. But
It's up to you.
Just a comment. Something that can always be amended, so we can
Yeah, I'm not worried
think about it
for
and
now.
leave it
Okay.
for now. Vote to dissolve the excuse me. Vote to dissolve the custodian position preliminary screening committee.
Make a motion to dissolve the custodian position preliminary screening committee effective March 3rd, 2025.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion regarding the scheduling of a special town meeting and review of the draft special town meeting warrant. No?
No what?
Do we still need it?
I've spoken to council as of this afternoon, and while council reiterates their advice that their preference is to stay within the 120 days, the feedback from MassDOT is that that's not applicable. And as long as everything else is taken care of, they're willing to certify. So, with that understanding, I think the immediacy to need a special town meeting no longer exists unless you would like to, for good measure.
You have that in writing from MassDOT there, good to go?
We're
Oh,
both
that-
on the same call. I have a witness.
I was going to say we have a couple confirmations of it not being, it does not apply to this.
Yeah, if council is willing to certify and move on, and we were holding that STM for that purpose, and then we were going to backfill, thing here or there if
Right.
we needed to, opportunistic,
Right.
utilize the time.
100%.
And none of those were time sensitive that we would have to do those right now. I mean, I think we would just hold off for now, move forward with this, and get it certified, move forward without the STM.
And move those other articles into the annual.
Either move them into the annual, but then also, typically we do an end of year STM anyway. So if there was something that came up in the interim, we could do one in June
Okay.
if need be before end of fiscal year.
Yeah,
Okay.
of course.
Okay.
So I'm not in any desire to rush
not
into an
either.
STM.
We're so close to an ATM, and it was only if those weeks mattered, and they did for that.
I thought they mattered, so
Right.
But
which
if
is why I
that
asked.
doesn't apply, then I don't think they matter anymore.
Yeah,
I think
Okay.
we're good.
Okay.
no STM.
There we
So
go.
just copy paste ATM and remove
Move it
7
over.
of them or whatever. 5.
Yep.
All right.
Moving on. Review of 2025 almost anything goes guidelines.
Mm-hmm. I made no recommended changes from last year. This is largely the exact same document with the updated dates.
With our extended winter. No.
Right.
Sure feels like it. He just sort of extended it. I was like, what?
No more.
Delayed? Would that be better? Any questions, comments, concerns?
Well, if there's no substantive changes from last year, I guess my question would be, how did last year go?
Went great.
Went great.
They're handling everything. I meet the drivers, the first, whatever the.
I know it's not busy, but come on.
No, it's been good. I meet the drivers on the first day. We give them their list of their do's and don'ts. The stickers that they can sticker on the stuff that does or does not go. They usually let us know. They have sent another truck back for some things, but I believe this year they're doing the clean sweep again. I think it's the weekend after, I think is scheduled, like it was
2 weeks.
within like 2 weeks after the collection, so the residents can bring those materials, those things down, and pay for them to get rid of them at the collection site.
We're going to use Public Works again for that.
Yes.
Since we're talking about that now and it's related, did that go well? Better than here?
I wasn't
site?
here for this one, but I think the flow down at the Highway Garage Treatment Plant works a lot better.
Okay.
I guess that they had cars backed up out here onto 63.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
it
that's
gives a
not
lot
good.
more room for people down there
Right.
to come down and get up. Yeah, I thought it went well down at the shop.
We had fewer people participate in the fall than we did in the May timeframe last year.
Yep.
It was only our second time hosting, so we're not sure what the rationale is for that. So I think we just want to get the word out early and make sure that residents and even because the Gill, the Northfield, the
I was going to say
surrounding
it's
towns are
neighboring
invited.
surrounding
Yeah.
towns as well. It's not just Erving.
Yeah, it's not just
Right,
there.
right,
Yeah.
right.
So we want to make sure that's available to everybody. So the goal was to get this plus that announcement in the April around town, and then reprint it again in the May around town. So hopefully the 2 months plus social media and whatever else we need to do to get the word out.
If you think it went great, I say if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
You know, something that the whole department is very thankful that the board, the finance committee, the residents approved the money to have our trash collecting people do it instead of us. The crew is very, very thankful for it. So, yes, I would agree, Jim. Don't fix what's not broke.
Can I
Probably
say the one
safer
thing that is
for-
broken?
Yes.
Oh,
Because we don't know the solution to this, and I know the residents who bring it up every year will bring it up again this year.
Of
There
where we
are-
start.
Hmm?
Of where we start.
Well, that's always that's always an issue. The concern that we deal with every year between Glenn, myself, the police chief, is claims of illegal dumping.
mhm.
There's no way for us to prove or disprove what material comes into town. It's largely the honor system. We just know that the longer something stays on the curb, the more apt it is to be either dragged down the street or dropped off at somebody else's house. So it still may have originated in the town of Erving, but it may not have been in front of your house originally. Somebody else may have picked it up and moved it when they loaded something to a truck or moved it. We've had claims of hazardous materials, paints, paint thinners, things of that nature left in boxes in front of people's houses. It's really hard for us to be able to prove or disprove any of that and then remedy those situations. So there are certain residents who feel aggrieved by the existence of the program because they feel like it invites this occurrence. In particular, Old State Road
Old State
seems to
Road,
be
yep.
a place where we get a lot of those complaints.
I guess maybe I'll start. A couple things, and I'm presuming some of this based on what you're sharing. It sounds a bit like maybe those aggrieved by that the program existence aren't utilizing it.
They
It
are.
would sound like.
They are utilizing it.
Well, I'll just bluntly say you can't have both.
That's the hard part.
However,
that's
I
the
will
hard
also
part.
say the other 10, 11 months a year, everybody isn't having a problem with illegal dumping on their front yard that they're not catching or calling us about.
Agreed.
Or they're having it and they're not calling us. So just because this program's happening doesn't change anything, in my opinion. If someone threw a box of paint in your front yard any other month of the year, you'd hopefully react quickly or you'd handle it.
Right.
We wouldn't be any more equipped to handle it or do anything about it then than we will when anything goes is going on. If there isn't someone that sees something, has photos, cameras, video, whatever. So I understand if there's a pile out there that someone adds to. You didn't. I get it, but we can have no program. It's about the only option, right? And the reality is we can't police every pile for everybody. And
No,
you
and
have some ownership of your space and your property too.
Yeah, and unfortunately, people are putting stuff out prior to the start date that's advertised. So the longer their piles is out, is the more option for people to drop stuff off also. So honestly, I think if people would stick to the actual start date of putting stuff out, there probably would be a lot less of
So
it.
that's what I was
Maybe
going to
that's-
chime in with.
yeah, no,
Is
please.
not only sticking to the dates that are already listed of when you can start putting stuff out, but if a resident has seen in the past or claims of illegal dumping at their property, the longer they wait, it's easier for somebody to illegally dump on a pile that's already existing than it is for somebody to come up with it's clean slate, there's nothing there, and they just stop on the side of the road and put trash out.
Right.
That's not as likely. It can happen, but it's not as likely to happen. So if there are households that historically have this happening to them, if there's an opportunity to delay, now that's everybody's lives are busy and there's only so many opportunities to take the time it takes to clean out your house and your garage and your shed and get all that stuff
Absolutely.
out there. So I'm not telling everybody to put it all out the day before it starts, but the idea that if you can wait longer, do so. If you have that opportunity to wait longer, because it'll ease that burden of seeing people dump. Those that are illegally dumping are opportunistic to pull over as if they're checking somebody's pile to take the scrap and the whatever away, and instead they're putting stuff out. It's easier to do. It's not so easy to do when there's nothing to stop. Why are you stopping in front of my house? There's nothing there to stop. Keep it moving. There's no reason to be here checking out my tree belt.
Right.
I mean, the other piece of enforcement of the start date, if you guys think that's something that helps. I don't know what that looks like, but You know, that's too, because you're 100% right. We don't always, but we try to do it the last weekend before. If that's what we can align things. Just because it could be a mess in the yard too. That you're cleaning up whatever people pick through, spread out. Like I can have the similar complaints, right? We all have some cons to enjoying that perk, but
So we currently are advertising that April 26th, which is a Saturday.
it's 2 weekends, right?
Gives you 2 weekends.
And I think by and
But-
large, that's
But late March, early April is not an unheard of thing.
Agreed.
And by and large, sure. But all I'm saying is if that's an issue and that's something that would help curb it, I don't know if there's any thing on the other side of it that we would look to do. I'm not encouraging it or not.
You touched on a point where, more and more people have, I'm not going to name specific brands, but people have doorbell cameras, people have home security systems, and they're all relatively economical to source, and they're very easy to install now. If people have concerns about these, they can certainly, take measures. Another thing is if, depending on the number of aggrieved people, we've had things recently where petitions were put together so that people brought an issue to town floor to be voted on. And if people think it's that prevalent and they're so inclined to say, we want to call a vote to have this program eliminated because we're aggrieved by it, and let the town as a whole speak. They have that option.
Yeah.
I particularly think it's a great service for our town.
I know there have been ideas floated at times about having a place or two for a period of time on a weekend or something where we just have, roll-offs or whatever it is, and it's manned, and you have to come bring instead of pick up. And there are reasons why I'm sure residents prefer pick up. It's not, what you have, it's not easy to get it there. So I understand that but that's the only other options that I've heard of out there that kind of might move the needle also, because now it's supervised, disposal. It's not a pile out front, but that takes away a portion of why it's a really strong benefit.
Playing devil's advocate, we have a collection site. How are we going to prove residency?
Well, we
So
had
that was
challenge.
the actual concern of doing a dump site, is how do you know where that truck or that carload came from? You can't prove it, so it may be in an Erving residence vehicle, but it's,
Well, you can't prove where the front yard pile came from either.
you can't a lot
In
of
the
times,
same
no.
way. I mean, if
Correct.
we're being, like
Yeah, I remember that being an issue
that
also.
load then got unloaded on the front yard instead of brought down. But I mean, you're right. Outside of, the same way in clean sweep, right? There's confirming residency, or they do sign up ahead of time too. But I'm not suggesting we try to do all that this year, or that's even a solution. Just throwing out ideas. But
No, I wouldn't. We're early March now, so we're 2 months away from it. I wouldn't say if we're going to disband this program that now's the time to do it. We proceed with this year and advise people of their options. And
unfortunately, we said this last year too. And so I think just making sure that if we are going to look at the program, we asked the question, how did it go last year? Let's ask that question in late May, early June. And if it's not going well and we're having a lot of those issues, start those conversations then of whether or not this program needs major overhaul or, ceasing of offering it. But have that conversation in late spring, early summer, so that if you are going to make a change, you can make that notification very early. And you don't have to wait until the end of winter to let everybody know that is no longer going to be an option in spring.
Right.
So I just flip when that conversation happens.
Fair enough. We can do that.
I've encouraged the people that have called with the issues, and again, some of them it's the same people every year. I've encouraged them to just come to a board meeting, ask at town meeting, view their complaints. Let the board know, but they also
think-
like the program also.
That's the flip side.
right.
That's the flip side.
the good with the bad a little bit. There's
There is
nothing's
some bad that
perfect.
goes with it, and
That
you hate to,
Cake and eat it too thing.
Yep.
throw it all out just because of a couple of issues.
Well, I think it went really well, and I think the piece of this is also, especially if it's repeats, like we don't have a solution for them. We've already given them all the options. We didn't come up with anything new today.
Nope.
Except maybe we should a little more strongly, call out the fact that to help prevent that, waiting until closer to, not Saturday the 26th, but closer to pickup date can help avoid that. And, but that there isn't, nothing that we can do. They can call the police, and I know they will talk to them about their options and the things they can do, such as, many mainstream cameras and other things that are low budget, low cost these days, and
there's
can do the
stuff
do the trick.
under $50. You can get a
Sure.
trail camera,
but
motion activated, night vision, all of that.
I would just maybe call that out, maybe add a bold section about that. And I think to the teams, there's no value in reiterating the same answers. We don't have new answers, so the program exists. If they don't want the program to exist, then they're welcome to bring that to their, elected officials, bring a petition and ask for that change. Otherwise, I think we've exhausted the options that we're aware of to make it as streamlined and prevent dumping and
I agree.
out of town, everything, you name it, right? So that's about as far as we can go.
Okay. I'll make this.
And it's also not, they need to understand that. But if we've educated them on that, then they know what their options are, and we can't spend a ton of time reiterating that every year either.
Yep.
So that's not a realistic expectation for the staff. So, let your staff know that too.
Absolutely.
It is okay to say we've had this conversation. I don't have anything new for you. I recommend you explore the same options that we've discussed before and move on.
Okay.
Unless you all disagree.
Nope, not at all, sir.
Thank you all.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Clean sweep. We also loosely covered. Same. We're good with it.
Yeah,
Following week, couple
I'll
weeks.
get the final language from the district,
Okay.
and we'll put it out so it'll be like a companion document in the around town.
Okay. But we're not planning to see that. You're going to just send out what they provide.
Yeah, it's largely the same information countywide.
It's good enough for me.
So it normally is 4 hours, I think. It's like a
Yep.
9 a.m. to 1. So
Yeah.
that won't change.
Yep. Perfect.
That last year
Good.
was great.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Review meeting minutes from January 27th, 25.
Motion to approve meeting minutes from January 27th, 2025 as written.
Beat me to it, so I'll second it.
Any discussion?
None.
All in favor?
Aye.
Review of the draft annual town meeting warrant.
Just meant to be a first read.
Yeah, you were
Any-
mentioning you're still working on some formatting and
Yeah, I've been trying to get our article structure from the previous iteration into the new column formatting, and wide multi-column and row tables no longer format as nicely in this format. So I fixed most of them. The elected official one's going to be a little more complicated to do, so I need to work on that.
I see you have a couple of notes on there.
Mm-hmm.
One is
Because it's
related.
linear. Okay, because it's two column. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. One is related to capital improvements for water department enterprise, and the other one is wastewater enterprise,
Exactly.
right? Capital line items.
So last year was the first year we used that approach, which is something that council wanted us to amend. And the challenge, I think first we're getting our brain around doing it, I think that the challenge that I came to realize was that we have never set a goal for, and I'll use water as the example, for what you want to appropriate through the raising of fees for capital improvements. We've always just looked at what was left in the certified retained earnings, and that just became the pool. So last year we used this article format. We could add a line in that said, and I'm making this up, $5,000, $10,000 for capital improvements, whatever your goal was, and you could put that in as a proposed expense or an appropriation into, say, a stabilization fund. And about a month and a half ago or so, I mentioned to you it may be something to consider creating a stabilization fund for both enterprises. So instead of relying on retained earnings and waiting for that to be certified every year and losing access to those funds for 6 months, you could have it in a stabilization fund where it's garnering its own interest. It does take a 2/3 vote to get it out, so it's a higher threshold to appropriate, but I'm not thinking that that's truly a barrier. And it may allow you to have more ready access if a maintenance need for the system comes up. And those could be intentional appropriations into that fund.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
We both did that.
Yeah, we did. I could hear it.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say I do like the concept of putting it in there. I am a little fearful of the 2/3 at
Okay.
times, but that wouldn't stop me from doing it. The piece that I like about it is that the intentionality of we have a lot of that. We have a plan of all of those improvements that need to happen over the next. They're all categorized as various
Right.
stages. Some are immediate and some are 10 years down the road.
Right.
Having that fund says we understand the long range plan of these capital improvements that have to happen, and we start doing the long range saving for those as we go on.
Right.
They're earmarked, they're in here, and we have to put X amount in every year over the next decade to
Right.
ensure that we can get to them.
And when we do the rate setting for the water department, and we're looking at gallons used over a 5-year average and projecting what we anticipate usage to be for the coming year, and then we're comparing that as trying to determine a rate towards all the expenses. We're typically looking at wages, we're looking at ordinary expenses, debt service if one existed. We don't always put in a capital placeholder. So this may be a mechanism to
Yeah.
ensuring that there's some intentionality around making sure that the rates apply some level of capital planning capacity.
It's another layer, and I would just say that at the next capital planning, it's to have that conversation about, folding that piece into that
Right.
as part of the equation
Right.
In the long range plan. We haven't done that. That one,
Nope.
those ideas have come up as capital planning, but not as a separate fund that we would put money into for
Right.
a 10-year plan or whatever it may be.
Within the enterprise.
Within
yeah.
the enterprise
Yep.
fund.
Yeah, because it was new.
Right.
I think we also find, I get what you mean about 2/3. On the other hand, for half the year, when something comes up, it's like
It's zero.
stabilization.
Yeah,
9/10
that's
or
it. It's
Whatever,
not,
you know.
whatever it
It's
is. No,
still
you're
at
right.
least 2/3.
Yeah,
and
it's even
yeah,
greater.
okay, for half the year, maybe it's not, but we're scrambling if that happens in that half of
Yeah.
the year when we don't have more flexibility in our funding sources.
No, I agree.
So do we, I think there's some, and I'm assuming the idea, well, one of them says free cash, but generally I would think we would want to move retained earnings in both cases, some portion thereof.
I would think so.
So are you recommending that we task the capital with maybe taking a look at that and making a recommendation? And then
Yeah, that's
incorporating
what I
that
was saying is
in
when
future
capital comes
years
back
into what's a plan for a deposit needed to kind of sustain?
Based on the historical amounts of retained earnings, how much of that would you recommend putting aside to meet the needs of all of the various capital improvements that have been recommended that need to be done? And having that committee, that board come up with a plan that says, yes, we
Put
want.
into this article structure.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is
Well,
you're
one of the-
asking what to do with the existing retained earnings.
Well, I think there's 2 or 3 parts in what we're asking the capital to do, and that's what I wanted to kind of define quickly, or at least start, right? Especially if we're going to incorporate it into this year. So this year, I think it's, do we seed any money, and if so, how much, and where does it come from?
Yep.
Is it from retained? Is it from free cash?
So we
Haven't
had
gotten there yet.
we had an interesting experience with that with the opioid settlement fund, where we thought we could seed with existing revenue sources, and then they came back and said it wasn't available to July 1st.
Right.
So while we like to think comprehensively and try to seed it, I'm wondering if we're going to encounter the same challenge.
I was just going to ask the same thing.
So step one may be just authorizing its existence and getting that on the books with DOR. And in that motion, I can craft the language to say that you can dedicate a source of revenue like we did with the opioid settlements. So that doesn't need to go to town meeting in the future. The treasurer's been authorized to move those funds into the settlement fund. So we could probably structure it to say whatever the town appropriates in its budgetary article for capital stabilization can automatically just be transferred in without
Out of
further
retained earnings.
into the fund, right? I think we could accomplish that in one vote, but then we may have to wait till after July 1st
To seed it.
to
move
seed it.
more, which means wait until about this time.
Right,
Because it won't be available.
until
For
Because
six
it's
next,
more
not
months.
certified.
right.
So you don't think we can move the certified funds in?
Let me double check.
Okay,
DOR
let's
is the
ask.
one who pushed back the last time, but let me
I was
ask.
going to say that's what happened with the opioid is.
Because we thought we took care of all of it,
Right.
and DOR said you were trying to do too many transactions at the same time.
Well, just put in there, we'll move it into capital stabilization, earmarked to be moved into
You
enterprise
absolutely could
later.
do that.
Oh.
You could.
But I don't know about
It-
moving that, I mean, depending on what we do in wastewater, that's a lot of money to move into capital, move back out later, and that's 2/3, probably.
That is true.
So,
But
so
we may be able
maybe
to do
not,
something.
but it is a way to move it into a capital stabilization sooner if we needed to
Yep.
for any reason, before we have them in the enterprise. Anyhow, so maybe that's a little ahead of it.
Let me ask.
Still worth them, still worth asking capital to look at the existing retained earnings and make a recommendation on what they think should be put into a dedicated, in the enterprise capital fund.
Happy to ask them that.
And then to start incorporating into the plan recommendations on what is needed to keep that sustained.
Yep.
For us to be able to incorporate into the operating,
Yes.
or fees or taxing or
Yeah.
whatever, depends on
And
which one
this
it
one
is. but
current year might just wait.
But maybe the last time we have to
This year we'll just
do that.
seed it or
We,
make it or something.
we do
or
whatever.
plan
We,
it.
we build a plan, we get a structure there, we get it approved, and then we start putting money in next year.
Exactly. Yep. Okay.
Makes
I will
sense.
do that.
I think our wastewater has gone down $500,000 in using
Yeah.
it up for things without reseeding it because we only fund operating.
That's the only thing we're focused on.
Right.
Correct.
I had
So
another question on that,
you
but I don't know
wanted
what
the
it was.
rest of
Go
this,
ahead.
this was all a first read. I just wanted to address the
Yep.
two memos
one.
that you put in there.
I figured the earlier you had this, the more you could be thinking about your budget plan and how you want to build this out.
Yep.
And over the next few weeks, as we have joint meetings, I can start filling in the agreements that you all have.
Okay.
Retained earnings, that was half of my question. Retained earnings can be utilized for operating budget. You can subsidize the operating
Yeah.
budget, because we did for a while in wastewater way back.
Right.
We didn't actually raise or charge for the whole budget,
Okay. Yes.
my first year or two here. Or use it for capital. I mean, there's no, not, or move it out to free cash. I mean, that's the only, or to general, to somewhere else. Those are the only things you could do with it. You can move the money out, you moved it in, you can move it out eventually if you really want to.
It's probably it's harder to do that with, say, the water system because it's all rate payers in those sources. So cashing it out, I think, would cause more questions than
Sure.
wastewater
not
because it's
recommending it, I'm
largely
just
tax
saying
funded. I think
path.
it's more fluid. But your
Okay.
your assessment's correct. There's a limited list of what you can use it for, and that's it. That's correct.
Just from the standpoint of what makes sense, I don't know that we, knock on wood, don't need retained earnings to operate.
Right.
It's not a very sustainable model.
No.
And so what else would we use it for? There's really limited options that would be capital, effectively,
Yeah.
if we're not expecting to. So just that lens to it says most retained earnings could probably go there. I don't know if there's any other reason or value in it sitting in retained earnings instead for any period of time.
Yeah.
Something to muddle over. I don't need an answer tonight, but that was my thought process is like,
Okay.
what else would we use retained earnings for to leave any amount of excess
Any
every
in-
year in
any
there
in
that we don't
reserve.
spend in the plan
Right.
by July 1
Well, I was going to say
or June 30.
if there is, then you can craft it where it's up to, and then leaving a balance of, so you
Sure. Or always leave less this much or
yeah,
something.
less. Yeah, there you go. That's the language I was trying to come up with.
Transfer
balance
the
of
balance of
less-
50K or something.
Whatever, 25,
I wonder if
30,
we could
50.
Put that in the authorization vote
something
So
to
that the
explore.
treasurer's just authorized
That's what,
anything
well,
above
that's what I was
that.
saying, is if we
Give
do,
me
if,
annual language.
if there
I'll
is
always do
a piece that you're thinking of, it comes to any one of our minds that yeah, we should hold some back, and we attach a dollar amount to that. We just craft it in that
Right.
generalized blanket authorization.
That makes sense.
I think the only other option is before you can pull it out of retained earnings and use it for operating costs without 2/3. You could pull it out of capital with 2/3 and use it for operating costs if you get a vote to do it within the enterprise fund. After it's been certified, right?
There was proposed legislation. I don't think it went through. I'll double check
To
with
kill
the
the
attorney.
2/3.
It wasn't generally, no. General stabilization, absolutely not.
No, but for
Special
these.
purpose.
Yeah,
Yeah.
special purpose ones.
Because the purpose is so well defined and the voters have said that's its explicit use. So say it was capital for water.
As long as you're not going outside of water, you don't need anything more than.
A simple majority.
Andrea had mentioned that just the other day when I was over there,
Yeah.
and had said the same. She wanted to check on it because it would make it a little bit.
I feel like that was
Easier.
introduced in the last session. It may not have made it to the end, but I'll double check.
I think exploring what retained earnings options we have and how does that value differ from a capital stabilization within the enterprise,
Okay.
so you can make an informed decision on is there any limit to or minimum we wouldn't want to move.
Okay. Yeah, when I'm working with the town accountant this week, I'll ask her knowledge of that, and she can also help me get in touch with our representative at DOR, and I'll simultaneously ask council as well.
Okay.
Excellent.
Anything else on the ATM anyone had so far? First read.
Not yet.
No.
And we have a resignation letter from Michelle Turner from the Conservation Commission. Just want to thank her for her time on that commission and welcome her to join other things when she feels she has time or interest in the future. In addition to the other items she already brought up.
Agreed.
So does that bring us to 2 vacancies, or
We have
did
one.
only have
We currently have one vacancy now.
right? So it'll bring us to 2.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Actually, I was
She is the one.
I was anticipating.
Oh,
I was
okay,
anticipating this
okay.
resignation, so I preactively was
Staying
getting the word out there.
staying ahead of the list of openings.
Trying.
I know we have a lot, so I wasn't positive if we
Yes.
already had one on here or not. So,
So you still have 4
so we'll
members.
just have So we have 4. Good. Thank you. So we'll advertise for that as we advertise as usual for
We'll get it out in the
more openings.
April edition.
Okay. And then we have the FY25 AP warrant, 18th AP warrant, in the amount of $196,310.23.
You want a motion?
So, yeah, motion to approve the 18th accounts payable warrant for fiscal year 2025 in the aggregate amount of $196,310.23 as presented.
Second.
Any discussion?
Done.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any other business? Okay. We have budget next week at 7 joint.
Correct.
We'll have the position description and probably a few other small items prior. Budget, ATM, funding sources,
The
free
whole
cash,
gamut.
the whole, the
The
whole,
whole thing.
the whole walk, end to end, right?
Shebang.
Yeah.
All the adjustment requests and position requests and
Yep.
Get a first
Over level
solid
funded
look on where we're at.
walk through, yeah. So,
Okay.
so that'll be a thorough dive into it and start hopefully directionally getting honed in on what we got. Anything else?
I have nothing.
So.
Motion to adjourn at 7:39.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Have a good evening.